The fog lay thick over the empty streets, pressing against the dim glow of streetlights, hiding shapes that should not have existed. In the middle of the cracked asphalt, a letter lay splayed open, soaked in crimson. Its edges were uneven, torn, as though it had been dropped in haste or anger. He did not notice it at first, carrying the weight of 2 days' exhaustion stacked upon him like bricks. The cold bit at his ears, the wind whipping at the coat that had long lost its warmth. The city around him was silent, but the silence was full, heavy with unspoken threats. When he finally bent to pick up the letter, the handwriting made his heart seize. It was his name written in letters he did not recognize, letters that belonged to someone he had hoped never to see again. His daughter slept in the apartment above the street, her soft breaths rising in rhythm with the hum of the heating pipe. She did not know that the past had found him, that the carefully built walls of their little life could be breached with a single stroke of ink on paper. He turned the letter over in his hands, feeling the cold seep into his fingers, the blood a warning he could not ignore. Each letter, each stroke, was a key to a memory he had locked away, a memory of betrayal that had left him with nothing but debts and despair. He had learned, long ago, that silence could be deadly, that what is unseen can strike with more power than what is known. The night stretched ahead, an endless expanse of shadow and fog. He walked, careful not to trip on the uneven sidewalk, careful not to draw attention. Every corner, every alleyway seemed a potential threat. The city felt different tonight, as though it were holding its breath, watching him. He felt it in his bones, something from the past was moving toward him, and nothing he had done could stop it. The letter was a summons, an invocation of a past life, a past betrayal, a past he thought had been buried in silence and hardship. Days blurred into weeks, each one longer and heavier than the last. He moved through them with mechanical precision, wake before dawn, prepare breakfast, dress his daughter for school, work 2 jobs to cover the rent and bills that piled like silent accusations. At night, he returned to the empty apartment, carrying groceries, the exhaustion of labor etched into every line of his face. He forced smiles for her, the laughter that spilled from her lips a temporary balm over his raw nerves. Yet each night, when the lights went out, the shadows returned. Memories of the betrayal gnawed at him, unrelenting. The friend who had walked away, leaving him with debts, humiliation, and the bitter taste of being abandoned, was not gone. He could feel the echo of that betrayal in the silence that followed him, in the letters that arrived without warning, in the shadows that lingered too long behind closed doors. His days became exercises in control, in strategy. He mapped routines, anticipated threats, prepared contingencies. Yet the past was a living thing, not content to remain in memory. It intruded in small, insidious ways, a misplaced object, a knock at the wrong time, a shadow where none should have been. The city itself seemed complicit, the fog hiding watchers, the silence holding breathless threats. He was haunted not just by fear for himself, but by the realization that his daughter's innocence, fragile and luminous, could be stolen. She was the center of a fragile universe he had fought to construct, and every threat to it was a dagger at the foundations of his life. He remembered the nights when she dreamed of music, fingers dancing over imaginary keys, her voice rising in soft, pure notes. Her hope was a mirror of the life he had promised her, the life he was determined to protect. Yet the shadow of the past was relentless, a storm gathering at the edges of the small, bright world he had created. And with each passing day, he felt the narrowing of possibilities, the tightening of the trap set long ago, waiting patiently for him to stumble, to fail, to reveal weakness. He moved like a man balancing on a blade, cautious in every step, precise in every action. His sacrifices, the endless labor, the stolen moments of sleep, the constant vigilance, were a testament to a love unspoken, to a devotion that did not waver despite exhaustion, despite fear. But he could not escape the truth. Love alone would not protect her if the past demanded its due. It was a lesson he had learned too late, and now the shadows crept closer, their intentions clear, their presence undeniable. The man from his past appeared in fragments at first, in reflections, in whispers carried by the wind, in the deliberate silence of corners he thought empty. He had believed that years had buried the betrayal, that the debts, the humiliation, the nights of endless worry had faded into faint memories. But they had only been waiting, patient and cold, for the right moment to strike. The city itself seemed to know of this return, the fog curling tighter, the streetlights flickering as though in warning. Each morning, he rose with a weight in his chest, a heaviness that was no longer just fatigue but anticipation, the sharp awareness that the past is a predator that never tires. He watched from the shadows of the apartment, his daughter humming as she practiced her music, the notes rising into the cold morning air, a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness. The man from the past moved like a ghost across the streets, his presence a ripple of unease. He had not come seeking reconciliation, had not come to apologize or to explain. He had come to remind, to threaten, to assert the dominance of what had once been stolen. Every plan the father had made, every careful measure of safety, felt suddenly fragile. The past was not inert. It was alive, cunning, capable of striking where least expected. The nights became restless, filled with shadows that shifted too deliberately. He noticed the small signs first, footprints in snow that did not belong, windows left ajar though he remembered closing them, the faint echo of a voice in corridors meant to be silent. Each occurrence drew him deeper into a labyrinth of vigilance. He found himself thinking not only of survival but of justice, of the debts unpaid, of the humiliation unredressed. And yet, more than all else, he thought of his daughter, her small hands brushing over the piano keys, her eyes shining with a trust he had sworn never to betray. He understood that the only war that mattered was the one fought to keep her safe, even if it meant confronting the darkest recesses of his own history. He began preparing. Every corner of the apartment was mapped, every exit considered, every sound memorized. He trained himself to notice anomalies, to anticipate threats, to move like a shadow among shadows. Yet, even in preparation, fear had a way of creeping in, subtle, almost imperceptible, like water under the door. He feared not for himself, for he had long accepted that danger was part of his existence. He feared for the fragile life that depended entirely on his vigilance, for the innocence that could be shattered in a heartbeat, for the dreams that could die before they were born. Chapter 4. The confrontation, when it finally arrived, was not sudden. It was subtle, a tightening of the noose over months of careful stalking, a psychological assault meant to break him without a single blow. Letters appeared with precision, photographs taken from angles he thought impossible, notes that hinted at knowledge only someone who had once been close could possess. The weight of the past pressed upon him in every moment, a relentless tide threatening to wash away the life he had built with such painstaking care. He moved with purpose, with discipline, trying to anticipate every move, every intention. Yet even as he planned, the line between hunter and hunted blurred. He could feel the man from his past in the air, in the hum of electricity, in the creak of floorboards. The apartment, once a sanctuary, became a theater of tension, a stage set for a drama where failure was measured not in lost arguments, but in lost lives. The father figure understood that he could not falter, that hesitation could be fatal. Every sacrifice he had made, every sleepless night, every extra shift, every moment spent shielding his daughter from reality, now counted toward survival. He retreated into memory, revisiting the days of betrayal, the dreams lost, the friendships dissolved by greed and envy. Each recollection was a knife twisting, reminding him of the depths of human treachery, of how easily trust could be weaponized, of how devastating the consequences of misplaced loyalty could be. And through it all, his daughter's laughter remained a tether, a reason to endure, a light against the darkness. He realized that survival alone was not enough. He had to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast, not merely for himself, but for the future she deserved. Preparations extended beyond the apartment. He studied routines, observed movements, anticipated patterns. He set traps not of violence but of awareness, alertness, and timing. He became a phantom in his own world, blending into streets, learning the rhythm of the city as though it were part of his body. Every step, every glance, every breath was calculated, measured against the potential threat. Yet he never allowed fear to dominate, never allowed despair to erode the hope that sustained him. Hope was the weapon he wielded silently, as essential as any plan or precaution. The night was cold, sharper than any winter he had endured, slicing through layers of clothing like the memory of betrayal that never faded. The apartment felt alive, every shadow a potential threat, every silence a warning. He moved with precision, checking locks, tracing paths, memorizing angles from which danger could emerge. The man from the past had become more than a threat. He was a presence, a force that shaped every decision, every breath, every step. There was no room for error, no margin for hesitation. Survival demanded total vigilance, and vigilance demanded sacrifice beyond the ordinary limits of endurance. He spent hours observing the street outside, noting patterns, recognizing subtle shifts that indicated movement. The predator's approach was methodical, deliberate, a psychological game designed to break his nerve and test his resolve. Every letter, every photograph, every note left in careful places was a calculated strike, a reminder that the past could reach into the present, that betrayal was not confined to memory but could be enacted with precision and cruelty. He realized that he was being drawn into a confrontation that would demand everything he possessed, everything he had learned through years of hardship and vigilance. Inside, his daughter practiced her music, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. Each note she played was a defiance against the darkness encroaching from outside, a fragile assertion of hope. He watched her with a mixture of fear and determination, understanding that the stakes were not just his own survival but the preservation of her innocence and dreams. His sacrifices, the double shifts, the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, were no longer abstract measures of devotion but tangible acts of protection. The life he had built was at risk, and he understood that the only path forward was confrontation, not evasion. The first contact came subtly, almost imperceptibly, through a window left slightly ajar, a shadow moving with intent. He detected it before it was fully visible, a muscle memory of vigilance honed by years of struggle. The confrontation was not physical at first. It was psychological, an intrusion into the sanctity of home and mind, testing resolve, probing weaknesses, a series of signals that demanded response. He countered with strategy, anticipation, awareness, each action precise, each decision calculated. He was no longer simply a father, he was a guardian, a sentinel standing between innocence and malevolence, between hope and destruction. Hours stretched into an eternity. The night became a battleground where silence itself was weaponized, where shadows moved with purpose, where every breath could betray presence or reveal vulnerability. The man from the past made his intentions known with a clarity that was terrifying. The life the father had painstakingly built was under threat, and the only measure of success would be the defeat or submission of the one who had dared to endure betrayal and survive. The father understood the cruel truth. The confrontation would not end without cost, and the outcome would shape not just the present but the very future of the daughter he had sworn to protect. Dawn came without ceremony, a pale light that revealed the aftermath of a night that seemed endless. The apartment was quiet, unnervingly so, yet the weight of vigilance remained. His daughter was asleep, clutching her sheet, her breathing slow and even, unaware of the danger that had circled them like a predator. He moved cautiously, checking the perimeter, ensuring the shadows had receded, confirming that no immediate threat remained. And yet the sense of unease lingered, a residue of the confrontation, a reminder that peace is often fragile, contingent, fleeting. It was then that he noticed the letter on the doorstep, a repetition of the pattern that had begun weeks ago. The envelope was unremarkable, but the contents shattered the illusion of safety. Inside lay a photograph of his daughter, asleep at her desk, practicing music, a note written in familiar handwriting, "Now I know whom to strike first." The words were simple, clinical, yet filled with malevolence. They encapsulated the truth he had feared. The past had not been neutralized, had not been repelled, had not been confined to memory. It was alive, patient, and relentless. The realization struck him with a force stronger than any blow, a mixture of fear, anger, and an awareness of vulnerability that left him momentarily paralyzed. He felt the full weight of his sacrifices, the endless vigilance, the sleepless nights, the protective measures, all rendered provisional by the cruelty of a life that refused to be ordered or controlled. The love he had for his daughter, the devotion that had sustained him, now collided with the stark reality of powerlessness in the face of a calculated threat. Yet within this terror was a spark, a recognition that endurance, courage, and strategic acumen were not meaningless. The struggle was far from over, and his role as protector was not diminished but intensified, sharpened by the necessity of response. The man from the past had not merely returned, he had imposed a challenge that was existential, demanding of intelligence, resolve, and moral fortitude. The father understood that the next actions would define not just survival, but identity, the identity of a protector, a guardian, a man who had faced betrayal and emerged not broken but refined by it. The choices ahead were impossible, fraught with ethical and emotional peril, yet unavoidable. He recognized that sacrifice must continue, that courage must be renewed, that the safety of the daughter, her innocence, her dreams, her life, was the ultimate measure of worth and the guiding principle of all future actions. And in that moment, as the dawn light crept across the apartment, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, he understood a terrifying truth: the battle between past and present, between betrayal and protection, between fear and love, was unending. Yet it was this unending struggle that defined him, shaped him, and ensured that no force, however cunning or cruel, could ever strip him of the role that mattered most. The shadows remained, silent but watchful, and he embraced the knowledge that vigilance, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion were not just survival mechanisms but the very essence of humanity, distilled into a single, relentless act of love.